All right, hello everybody, welcome. My name is Josiah and I will be your artist for today. And I just want to extend a nice warm welcome to all of you from wherever you are joining tonight for choosing to spend your, what day is it? Tuesday night with me creating a painting. All of you that signed up for Creative Box Live, I want to congratulate and thank you for taking that huge step of committing to making a painting every week. I think as artists, sometimes it's difficult to structure art into our days or into our lives in general. So thank you for doing that, for making art a priority and choosing to create art with me tonight. So without further ado, let me explain what we're doing here to set up. So if you've already been in the video for a couple minutes, this is a repeat. I've already said this. We should have our canvas, a water cup and paper towel, our set of brushes, a painting palette, our paints, make sure you have all your paints there, and then your stencil and graphite paper. And I'm going to show you how to use this now so we can get set up for the painting. This painting is called Red Hibiscus. It's a beautiful painting and I'm excited to make it with you guys. So if you have that graphite paper, all you're going to do is flip that so that the dark side is facing down. And then you want to be careful not to push on it, okay? That's basically wherever you touch, it's going to be like smearing pencil there. And then you just want to put your drawing or your stencil on top where you want it. So you can actually play around with the placement a bit. I'm going to follow what they did on the example pretty closely there. All right, and then we just need something that has kind of a fine point. So I'm just using a mechanical pencil because we are familiar with pencils and we draw with them all the time. But you could even just use the back of a brush, all right? And then all you do, and actually taping it down is very helpful, which I forgot to do, so I'm gonna go without the tape. And you just want to be careful not to press down too hard where you're not going to want these lines. It's good to just peel it up and check and make sure early on that you are pressing hard enough. You should be seeing the lines, but you don't want to be seeing your fingerprints. That means you're pressing too hard there. And we're just going to trace all of the lines, or at least all the ones that are helpful to you. There might be some of these that just aren't going to help you with your process, and by all means, just skip those. All right, so I'm just going to be doing the major petals here. I think the rest would just get in the way for me tonight. And then the leaves. Now, whether this is your very first painting with us or you've been subscribed from the beginning of Creative Box Live, I hope you're having a good experience with it, and we'd love to hear your feedback. This is kind of a new thing for us. Oh, there it is. So we really would love to hear your feedback on this. You can comment on our Facebook or even just give us a call or send us an email. We'd love to hear how we're doing with this. All right, so there is our sketch. So it just gives us enough to work off of that it'll make our process a lot easier tonight. So I'm very thankful for that because freehand sketching is always a little bit difficult. So here is the example painting. A lot of cool things going on in this. We've got our really dark background, which I love against these bright colors. Then we've got a few hints of that green in here, which is cool. So you have a picture of it up here, and I believe with your equipment you got a copy of this as well to go off of. So have that handy. It's good to see kind of where we're going whenever we're working on a piece, whether it's just a mental image of it or physically having a copy of the painting beside us. It just helps us with accuracy. But that being said, I encourage you all to tune in to your own painting, okay? So maybe yours is going to go a slightly different direction. Maybe your flower is actually going to have a little bit more of this. Maybe you really like this orange tone, and you're going to see a little bit more of it in yours. And that's totally fine, okay? Just that will change maybe a few other things, but if you're paying attention to that, it's going to work out, all right? Enough rambling on my part. Let's go ahead and get started with our background. So we're gonna want a big brush. My favorite one, the 1/2-inch filbert. Out of your packet, that is one of the 2 biggest ones, and it's the one with that curved top there. So set that painting palette down. And for our background here, we're just going to need black, white, and then we will mix our green that we'll be using in here. And I like to just take a small amount at a time, because once the paint leaves these tubes, it cannot go back in. And we still have one more painting this month to do with those paints that you were given. So we need some black and some white. And I will show you how to mix this green. We need yellow for it and some teal. So this is all we're setting up for now. I know some people will put out all their colors right away. For me, it just sometimes gets messy, and I might have to even get a new plate. So I prefer to just put out what we're using at the moment. Now, take that 1/2-inch filbert brush and scoop up a little bit of water. We're going to start by mixing that green. So we always take the darker color and pull it into the lighter one, because all we need is a little bit of that teal. That's probably all we need, just a little bit of it. So there's the green that I'm working with. And whenever we're mixing colors, we're all going to get different colors a little bit. They're not going to be quite the same. So be okay with that, but we want this to be pretty light. So that was mostly yellow with a touch of this teal. All right, then scrape off any excess paint on the side of the plate there so we can use it. And then wipe off any that's still left on your paper towel, and then clean it in your water. And the reason I do those 3 steps is to make sure that this water stays nice and clean for the whole painting. All right, we'll come back to that in a moment on our background. But right now we want to go in with that black. So I'm going to start with the black paint over here in the top left. And we have to be really careful when we get to the leaves here. And if you were like me and you did this where you didn't bring the lines all the way to the edge, make sure that you kind of finish that now. So you draw in where it would go, and that we don't go into that leaf. If it's helpful to you, there's other smaller brushes that you can use to get in really close. Sometimes that flat brush can be helpful. And same thing with the stem down here. We want to be careful that we are not covering up that stem. And so we have to draw in the rest of it. We're going to fill it in all the way to about here with just this solid black. So now I'm kind of jumping around. You don't have to do it that way. In fact, this might not be the most efficient way. Some of these steps might feel like they're really easy, like you don't have to pay so much attention to it, but in art, it's all about presence. It really is. We can't create good art if we are not here. So even in the simple steps like painting this background black, we're starting to become present with this object here. This was just a canvas when we started. We maybe didn't have any emotional attachment to it, but now we are getting to know it. We're getting comfortable with it. We're entering into this moment where we're going to have a kind of have a relationship with this canvas and leave it transformed, and us. So be here with this painting in every single step. Now, something with this brush, or really with any of them, to get close to edges, and this is a trick that I learned painting houses growing up, is we can angle the brush. We put a lot of paint on it and we kind of angle it, pointing towards the side where we want the solid line to be, and then we press in so that those fan out. We press in, and then we can go nice and close to it, and it'll be a really nice solid line. So it's pushing the emphasis, so we don't get that dry effect like that. We don't get that on our fine edge. We just get it on the inside. So it's a good way to get really nice and close to those. This is all set up for later. And I do encourage you to carry your colors over the edge. It's kind of an extra step. Add a couple of minutes to your painting probably. But I think it really helps it feel like you did the entire painting. You're not forgetting these sides and leaving them out of it. It's like an actor using the full stage, or an athlete using their full court. We don't want to leave any part of it untouched. Because this can be a powerful part of it right here, the side of the canvas. When you walk up to a painting, you rarely approach one directly from in front of it. And it can be really cool to be walking down that hallway and you see it from the side, and just something about the colors kind of catch your eye and you want to see more. All right, we have a few areas in here that are going to be a little bit tight, but we want to get those too. So right up against that edge. Got this triangle here. And you can already see the dark against the light that this painting is going to have. Something I've been learning about is looking at that light-dark pattern in a painting, that composition. If you simplify a painting and you simplify all the detail here, what are you really seeing if you squint your eyes? And it's this darkness, this kind of medium gray, and then it goes to this extreme vivid light right here. So we have our highest contrast right here, and then it kind of fades out to medium contrast on this side. So pay attention to that kind of stuff. That's what draws our attention to this painting, I think, is that nice bold orange and green on black. Can't miss it. Also with this brush, another trick is to hold it totally flat so that the hairs on it, if this is the brush right here, they are making that nice thin line. And you can get these really thin details here. It's one of the reasons I love this brush. It's very versatile. All right, I'm just going to bring this in a little bit further here, right to there. Because if you notice on this painting here, we have like this, it's going to be light right here, and then beneath this petal, it turns dark really quick. It's like a cast shadow from the flower. So we want to go right up to the edge of that petal, and then straight diagonally away from it pretty much. Straight down from that corner with our black. All right, and likewise up here we want to end it with a diagonal line. The same as right here, but it's going to be basically right off of where these dots are going to be. So just go straight kind of out of there, and we'll end with the black right there. And make sure we carry that over the side up here as well. Take a moment to kind of think about what this painting, what it means to you and what you might do with it. I think having that sort of an intention can help our process. If we have a person in mind that we want to gift it to, or a room or a space that we know of that we want to bless with this artwork, that can change the energy that we put into it. So be thinking about that. All right, so if we hold this up, we've got the black ending in the same spots now. Now we can transition into that gray. So I just kind of wiped off the excess paint from my brush here. And I'm going to pull some white off to the side, because we probably won't need quite all of that. So I'm going to pull some off to the side and just mix it with whatever was left in my brush. So we should get this nice light gray. The reason I want it to be pretty light is because when we brush up against that black, it will pick some of it up. And so we will get a darker gray than we're mixing right now. And we can always darken it. It's much harder to lighten it. So I'm going to start actually by outlining these petals here. Getting that nice smooth edge when we get close to the petals, and using that sharp edge to get into any corners we need to. All right, and we will want a little bit of water here now. So scoop up some water and add it to that gray if you have a little bit left. This is just to help us blend. The water will make it a little bit runnier. So I'm just going to add it right here up against that black now. And before we blend it, I'm just going to carry that over the corners, over the edge. And then we're just going to go into the black. And then right back out. Just enough. And then back in again. As many times as we need to kind of blend that together. And I do want to point out now that every artist has their own style. So where this artist here has these streaks, they added some of these after the black had dried all the way. I'm doing something a little bit different today. So bear with me. I know our paintings are going to look a little bit different than the example. That's because I'm a different artist than the person that made that one. And while I can mimic their style, I think we'll benefit more from being true to ourselves here right now. So we're just gradually kind of blending that, nice and smooth. If it does turn out a little bit streakier and you're coming across a different style that is yours, that's awesome, okay? Go with that. No need to change it to fit mine, just like I'm not changing mine to try to fit theirs. Tune into your painting, and if you're finding your own style, by all means, stick with it, okay? Be true to it. Now I'm going to mix a little bit more of this light gray because I lost some of it, I think. And we are going to add some more up here because I ran out. It's right up to the corner, basically. We'll pick up there in a minute. And then make sure you have some water for this part because we're going to bring it into the black and bring the black back out into the gray. Take that gray and bring it into the black, getting close to the edge there when you can. And then taking that black and bringing it back out into the gray. And looking at the example, I think, actually we got that pretty well. I was going to say we could lighten this up a bit, but I think we matched it pretty well there. So we want the transition to really happen right about here. There's a little bit before it leading up to it, and a bit afterwards as it transitions from that dark into that lighter gray. And when needed, add just a bit more water to help blend before those paints dry all the way. And then we are going to keep right along with this. And make sure that we're keeping that angle. So if the angle is not quite matching, let's touch that up now. I promise it will make a big difference. It's worth it. All right, and now we want a pretty quick transition to white. So clean that brush out really good. Just paint the bottom of your cup and dry it off. Get it really nice and clean. And then we want to take some water and some white paint. And this is just a reminder that, by the way, that you can pause this video and you will have access to it afterwards since you have the subscription to this channel. So don't feel too rushed, okay? If I'm moving too quickly through this, no problem. Pause the video, okay? I will not be offended. So we're taking the white now and we're picking up right where we left off. We have a lot of water in this white. Not a lot, but we have some. I'm just filling in actually to the corner with this white. All right, and then we are going to pull it in with a bit of water. So we're going to start right at that line of white. And just bring it into that gray, smooth and steady. It'll gradually get a little bit darker as it picks up some of that gray there. Then we can bring some of that back out into the white. And you can leave more streaks than I am. So I like having some of these streaks here. I think I've been a bit shy on that with this painting so far, but it can look really nice. So you can take some of the white and you can streak it into that gray and not blend it in all the way. You can take some of the gray and streak it into the white. Down here we want it to be a little bit sharper, so I'm going to bring it right up to that petal there for that cast shadow. And I actually kind of like how bold that is right now, just as it is. And painting is all stepping back and looking at it. So we're being present with it, and then we are periodically stepping back and examining what we've done. And so if I squint my eyes and look at that, I do like how sharp that shadow is, but I'm not sure if it'll fit. So I'm going to just smooth that out a little bit more. Add a bit more black now, and we can smooth that transition out. So at this point, I want you to just make any last touches you need to your black to white, or black to gray to white transition here. So if you want to darken it in some areas or lighten it in some areas. And remember, you don't have to do it exactly like the example or exactly like mine. But we're just touching up that transition now if we have any touch-ups to make. And then I'm cleaning out that brush. And before this has a chance to dry all the way, I'm going to add in a bit of this green. Now start subtle with it. We don't want to get too carried away. We can always add a little bit more. But we want the focus on this background to be the black and white, and just have a touch of that green to help match the green over here, okay? So it's kind of like to balance that. So I'm just going to add one nice big streak, and then take a bit of water and blend that in a little bit better. I'm going to brighten it. I'm going to go over it a few more times to get that nice and bright. There we go. And let's add a few more. And the more you go over it, the more it's going to blend with that gray, okay? So be careful about that. We don't want these to be gray streaks. So I'm just going to go over them, add them on there, and then leave them. This one I could go over a few more times because it was mixing with white, okay? The gray ones we want to be more careful about. And for good measure, in this section, I'm going to add just one more. And then clean that brush out real good. And you can leave that brush in your water cup between steps. So at the end of this step, we should have something like this, where it's a black to gray to white background with a few streaks of green. And if you like this streaky look that we just got with the green there, you can kind of bring that in a bit more. I know they did on the example, and I do really like that. In fact, I'm going to show you how to do that. Change the plans real quick. I want to add more of those streaks in there. I do really like the way they did that. So, when you are ready, let's take a bit of that white, just a little bit on our brush, and wipe off as much as we can on the side. We're going to do something called dry brushing here. And we're just going to start right up over here in the medium gray. And we're just going to pull these lines, going with that diagonal motion, pulling them across that. So starting as close as you can to either this edge or the outside. And then pulling those in and letting them blend just a little bit. And we can do a few kind of ghosty ones over here. So it transitions into that. So we just made it so there's a lot more of a streaky look now to that. It'll make more sense once we have it down here too. All right, we're just going to add a few here, and I'm going to avoid where this cast shadow is, okay? So I'm going to start actually at the bottom with these. Down here, going in. So So we leave that shadow that's cast from the plant untouched. I got a little bit dark there, but we can add more black on top of it if we want. And now we will do the same thing, the dry brushing, with our black, just to add a few streaks here. We can also touch this up if we want to. Any spots that we got too carried away with, especially in that really dark area, we can touch those up. And then we'll bring a few out. So same thing. We want most of the black brushed off on the side, just a little bit that we're going to carry in here and make these streaks. All right, like I've been saying, squint your eyes now and reassess. See if there's any changes you want to make. The only thing that stands out on mine is these three black lines that I just added all end at the same place. And I don't tend to like it when it does that. It creates a shape, a geometric shape in an otherwise kind of abstract and natural background. So I'm going to go back over this one and take it out further to break that up. And then I'm going to add just a hint more out here as well. There we go. Now we don't see any of that shape showing up in there that we don't want. So a pretty cool background there. And that is actually it for the background. If your water did happen to get too dirty, this is a good time to get some more. We're going to keep moving right along with this painting now. I'm going to grab a smaller brush. I'm using the smaller filbert. So it's the same thing, the curved top, but it's just smaller now. And I'm using that same bright green that we had in the background here. And with this color, we're just going to fill in all of the leaves and the stem, okay, just as a base coat, and then we can add other things on top of that. So bright green, let's fill these leaves in. Again, remembering we can get a nice thick line against the edge there by angling the brush out and kind of fanning the hairs on it, and then gently dragging it. If you go a little bit out of the lines, that's okay. You're just creating a new line. So pay attention to what is happening not only on the canvas as we're doing this, but also inside of your mind and in your body as we paint this. Are you becoming impatient with the process or uncomfortable? Art can show us a lot about ourselves. And I think through making it, we can grow ourselves. If for instance, my example of being impatient applies, we can recognize that and work on our patience through our art. If we are too critical of ourselves in our art, we can learn to be more gentle and accepting of whatever it is that we create. You might see some really beautiful things too. You might see an imaginative gift that you didn't recognize you had. And you can learn to see that and trust it. And to value it. All right, there we go with our green. And now we are going to do a bit of blending with this green here before it dries all the way. So we've got our example here. We can see there's that blue that's added on top. We can tell because it's a nice solid line. So I'm going to show you a bit on how we can deconstruct this painting. That green there, we can tell, the blue is a nice solid line, so we know that it was added on top. If we look behind that though, we've got this green that we just added, and we have some yellow and white. Now we will be adding some yellow at the very end to get this really bright yellow. We wouldn't be able to get that if we're mixing it on above the screen. But we can get this transition right here, and I really love that. So I'm going to show you how to add that. The white, continuing our deconstruction of the painting, the white is added on top, as is this teal here, the teal blue. So we will get to those all in time, but there's one that we can add right now, so let's go ahead and do that. So we just need some yellow paint and a little bit of white, about half of each. So it should be 1-to-1 ratio. Like that. So we get this bright yellow, very sunny. And this can go on the tops of a few of them. I'm going to make mine a little bit more yellow. So we're adding it on the top of that leaf and just blending it in. So about the top half of it, and then you can kind of blend it in. And if the green is already dried up, that's okay. We can kind of we can just add it on the top half, and it might be a little bit of a rough transition, and that's okay. Yep, so my green dried up a bit faster than I wanted it to, but this still looks really good adding that on top, following the curves and the motion in these leaves. And part of growing as an artist here is knowing when and where to dive in deeper. So on these, this is a background color, and what we really want from it is just to add that color on there and maybe start to gain a little bit of the movement. So right here, I just wiggled that on there, and we start to see a little bit of this motion. Now, if we like that wave that showed up there on accident, we can add more things later to complement it. So we could add this dark blue underneath it. And I'll show you how we can do that. What we don't need here is absolute perfection, because we're going to add things on top. So make sure you're getting it light enough. Like right here, I think I blended it in too much. I want a little bit more of that light yellow on the top of that leaf. Here we can just have a little hint of it. Maybe we get a bit of motion there. And then I'm just going to add a little bit into this section of the stem, because we'll have it get really dark down here. So I want it to also have that full spectrum of contrast. So just a little bit of light right there. All right, then we can wipe off the excess and put that brush back in our water. We will come back to the stem in just a moment. But let's go ahead and get started on our flower here. Let's do a little bit of deconstruction here so you can see where we're going. Now there's a lot going on here. I know down here I took that apart and it was a little bit more straightforward. Up here there's a lot going on. Let's remove that yellow-orange, that tequila sunrise kind of color, whoops, for now, and just ignore that. What we basically have going on here is this light pink, some white, and some red. And then we're going to complement it with a little bit of this blue, which will kind of look a little bit purpley where it gets added on top of that red, and a bit of this orange. All right, let's put that down for a moment, and let's jump on in. So find a clean spot on your painting palette. Sometimes it won't look like there's any clean spots, but acrylic paint dries fast. So like for me, this whole area is clean. So just tip it and see where it's not reflecting the light. And we'll just need a bit of red and some white if you ran out. And then as far as the brush that we're using, I'm going to go back to that larger filbert brush. All right, let's start by mixing that medium pink. So if we look up at the example, that main color that we see when we look at that. So we're going to start with the lighter color, as always. Take some white, and then pull in a little bit of red until you get the pink that you like. So mixing colors sounds pretty intimidating when you start off the bat, but really it's pretty straightforward. We are taking, we know how to make pink, right? You take red and you add white. So we just gradually add it until we get the color that we like. And that's the best test of it, is do you like it? Because if you like it, other people like you are going to like it too. So we find that pink color, and we can start filling this in. So we're just actually going to fill in the whole flower, except for right here. We're going to leave this petal actually. This one we'll do with the orange, and we'll add the pink on top, okay? So I'm going to start there so that you can see the line that I don't want to do. So right there we want to leave that. If you're using a slightly darker color, that's okay. They don't need to be exactly the same. And something I like to do is to leave a little bit of space around pencil lines so that I can find them later. Because we'll be blending and stuff, but we want to know where the edges of these petals are. Otherwise, there's no point of having added that stencil to begin with. So leave some of those white lines there to be able to find it by. So you can barely see them, but I left a bit of, whoops, and I forgot to do this one still. But I left just a little bit of a white line in between a few of those, and that'll be really helpful in a moment. And you know, earlier I was saying that like we all have our own unique art style, but going even further, we all have our own way of deconstructing a painting and building it up from the ground. So somebody else might have looked at this and said that we should start with that red and then add the other things on top. And that's a valid way to do it. There's no right or wrong really with this. So if you saw somebody else teaching it, they would make some changes. They would teach it in a different manner. And that's kind of a peek into somebody's creative mind, how they see it, what the main color is for them. So I'm cleaning out my brush, but we really actually don't need to here because we're going to do some mixing. So I'm actually going to start with my lighter areas. So I take back what I said. You do want to clean your brush since we're starting with lighter areas. We want to get a nice pure white. Sorry about that. All right, so let's take a look at that and find our main areas that we're going to have white. So the edges of this one, the edges here, and a bit up here and there. And that's it. We'll add some in here, but we're doing this one kind of separately. All right, so I'm just taking a bit of that white. I'm going to pull it along the top of this one. If you like that smaller brush, go ahead and grab it out. I'll probably switch to it in a moment. And you might want just, here, let me grab the other brush. You'll probably want just a little bit of water in there to help it blend. Whoops, I had not gotten all my green out. So make sure you're cleaning your brushes all the way before you get green in your pink. We can add this a little bit on the bottom as well. So we're just lightening that up, making this petal a little bit more 3D. Let's add a bit on this side as well. So already we're starting to see a bit of that shape, that this is coming towards us. Let's pull some here from the bottom, going up, and then they kind of disappear right there. And we don't make mistakes. Okay, so if you carry it a bit into that black, just smooth it out. You meant to do it. A certain part of you meant to do it. Going to add a bit right in here. And notice we don't want to go over them too many times. If we keep going over it and over it, it's going to all just blend together. So here we've got this interesting shape. These kind of come in and then they mimic that curve right there. So this coming down like that, they come in like this, kind of mimicking that curve, and then they take over when they meet this one, they mimic that. If that was too confusing, it's okay. Just do what felt right to you with that. And then here I'm just going to add a bit on the edge here and then pull it in. Let it kind of fade out into that pink. Let's just add a bit more right here. The edge of this one, and we will pull that in as well. And blend it in with that pink a little bit. There we go. It is looking a bit more 3D now. And if you didn't get it all the way to a solid white, if maybe you went a little bit heavier with the pink, and so it's blending a lot more than mine, that's all right. We can come back at the end, and we will add a few, and we will make the white even brighter. We're doing great for time, you guys. But now, let's go ahead and take some of that red, and we're going to do the opposite now. Not really the opposite, I guess. It's going to complement it. So I'm going to start right here at that center and pull a few lines that kind of trace down. So going towards the tip of that. As I said earlier, tune into your painting, okay? It might be a little bit different. Which areas? This point might be at a slightly different spot. Tune into your painting. And if you want some of that streaky look, you want to not go over this too many times. You want to just pull them on and then let it be. I know I keep touching it. I'm not taking my own advice. But touch it just enough and then let it be. Up here I'm going to fill in right up to that edge there. Leave a nice solid line against that white. And then pull that in there. We'll do that 2 more times actually. So it's kind of a stripe on this one. That's pretty cool. And if you're doing that thing that I told you earlier where you kind of press in and let the hairs on the brush fan out, look at what you will get. You'll get a really bright red on that edge where it fans out. You can see it up here. All right, here I'm going to add a bit of a curve. So I kind of emphasize that curve. And then let's smooth it out up here. We can follow in that white line that we made. And add a bit of this bright red right up against that edge there for definition. As well as right in here. All right, I'm seeing a few other spots that we need to get. Right in here, we can just darken that up. And then help transition it out into some of those so that the center is dark. But we want it to make sense. We want to show that darkness, or that bright red, I guess. It's not really dark. Show it fading out into those edges. All right, last petal. And then obviously we will come back to this one, but that one we actually want to be that nice yellow-orange as kind of the main color in there. All right, let's start at the edge here with that tip. And just trace that line in there. And a cool way to show line weight is by changing the thickness. So right here, these two lines go together, but it gets thinner at the tip, and then they spread out a little bit thicker. I think that can be really pretty. Take a bit of water to help it blend. And let's spread this out so it's a bit more of a gradual transition. You can even take a little bit of white and just add it in there. Help it along and becoming a bit of a lighter pink there. There we go. This is looking nice, you guys. I think we're doing well. All right, let's get this final petal started here. And just one more reminder that you can pause the video, you can rewind it, you can rewatch it later. So if I'm going too fast through these steps, or if you just need a break, go get a tea, or just to rest your eyes and hands and not be looking at this nonstop, go do that, okay? It's good to be able to see this with a new perspective every now and then. And we never want to be creating art from a negative place. So if you're feeling like you have to be here, wait until you can come to this with joy and a desire to create art, okay? Let's grab some yellow paint and add just a dot of red to it. So seriously, the slightest little dot of red is all you need. And you'll be able to see the color on here. We're going to start at the tip of the petal there. And we're just going to fill in this part of the petal. We can leave the top there untouched because we're about to do some blending. And then before we blend, let's add a hint of this color real quick into this petal. So we're going to add just a few streaks right here. It might look kind of weird at first, but I promise we'll make it kind of fit. So we're mostly kind of adding it right at the edge of this dark and light pink where they meet. Just like that. And that's the only spot I'm really going to add it. So it's kind of like there's this light shining from down here maybe. But now we have some blending to do on this petal. So first let's take a bit of white, just a dot of white, and add it along the side. Just to add a bit of variation into it. So one side is brighter than the other. And then grab any of that leftover light pink that you have. And this is going to go on the far right side there. And as you bring that in, it'll probably mix a little bit with that orange. And that's good. We want a bit of a mix. I love this color. Let me just zoom in there for you guys. So So we have that yellow orange to a light pink, kind of in the shape of a tongue there. Or I guess a flower petal. And now we're going to go straight to that bright red, all the way. And we're going to pick up actually at the center. Be careful of this light petal here. We want to keep this edge clean. Clean and bright. And let's just bring this out to the edge there where we left off with that pink. And then we're going to do something bold. We're going to bring a line that comes all the way down to this corner here. All right? So maybe test it a few times. Make sure you got the line down. And then just bring a line through. And then we can bring another. Let's have a bit of water in that red so that it makes an orange. And the more you go over it, the more they're all going to mix together. But I'm actually going to do that the first time. I think I didn't like how bright the transition from that red to that orange was. So I actually did muddy it a little bit. And now I'm going to go back in and make that red a little bit more bold. But now it has some transitional tones kind of undertoning it. So that should help make it look a little bit more like it fits. There we go. I think that helps a lot more. And then it might just be that we have too much paint in here, but I feel like I'm not able to get that bright red. So I'm trying to get that. I'm just taking a bit more of that bright red paint. And trying to get that darker right there. We can always come back to it though. And I promise this will come together even a bit more when we add in some solid white streaks. But let's take a break from the flower now and come back down to our leaves and stem. Let's look at that example again. We're getting there, you guys. So what I see right now is that we should add some of this blue teal in, some white and some solid yellow, and then we'll come in with the blue all at once. We can also mix this brown. All right, we took our notes. Let's go. So first of all, let's start with that white and yellow. So if you ran out of yellow or white, refill. We won't be needing much. And I'm going to start with the white. So the place I notice it most is along this petal right here. If we start right next to the stem there, and we just pull this out there. And you have to just trust the brush with that. It will take you good places, don't worry. And then to kind of balance it, let's add a bit of a highlight on this side as well. Let's add a bit more onto this one there, just along the underside there. And a bit of white on the top of the stem, where it gets pretty close to the flower. So it's just making that green look even more alive and bright. We can use it on that one. And a nice curving stroke on the bottom of that one. And then as a final place, I'm just going to put it right here along actually the left-hand side of that one. So I'm not really sure where the light is coming from on this painting. Looks like it's mostly coming from here, but then we're probably getting a light reflected back from something up here. There's a lot going on, but it's pretty, and that's what matters. And if we just start painting what we see, we will always have good results when we're looking at something beautiful. All right, let's continue with that yellow. So I cleaned out my brush. We're going to grab some yellow and just brighten up this a little bit more. So along the top of this, and this is just the yellow as it came out of the bottle, not mixed with anything anymore. We're adding this into the bright areas. What we're doing with this, let me explain real quick, is I don't know what the art word is. I'm sure there's some kind of a word for it. But green is our tone here. And I think when we start into art, we think you add highlights with white and you add shadows with black, right? But that can only take you so far, and a lot of your paintings will look kind of lifeless. So what we are doing, I think it would basically be called vibrancy of the colors. So we are tuning into the color tone here. So this is a green, so it's made of yellow and blue. So in the shadows, we are emphasizing the blue, and in the highlights, we are emphasizing the yellow. So it makes it look even more green than maybe a green leaf would actually be. And the key to this is subtleties. We don't want to go in with too much yellow or too much blue, or it'll actually kind of backfire on us and we'll lose that green and it'll look a bit more messy. Of course, there's no rules with art. You can make it all just yellow and blue, and people would see some of the green because we know it's a leaf. And it would just be very extreme. All right, there's that. So we just raised the yellow tones in there a little bit. Now let's actually just do the rest of the colors here in the leaves, and then we'll come back up here and finish our painting. So we want some blue, and then if you need more of the teal, go ahead and get some. Now, I do want to be careful with this. I would recommend actually playing it a little bit safer than they did. I think they have this really bold blue, and it might be too much. Like I was saying, we want to keep it subtle. I think the yellow is really nice with that green. The blue is a bit strong, okay? So I'm going to try using one that's a little bit less blue, and we'll see how that goes, okay? We might want to lean it closer to that blue by the end, but bear with me and just understand what I'm trying to do is make that be less extreme. All right, so I'm starting with the teal here. And we're going to add this kind of in our shadowy areas. So anywhere that the white is not, basically. We want to leave some of the green showing. We don't want to cover all of that up. And we don't need to add this teal in all of them. So I'm going to actually just add it in those two and this one right here. The only reason I picked those three is those are the three that I mostly see it in on theirs. No particular reason. All right, and like I said, I'm going to start with a tone that's not quite all the way blue. So I'm going to take some of that blue and some of that teal and mix them together. So it's about halfway between them. Maybe a little bit more blue. And this can be our shadow for a moment. We will go darker with it. This can go along the bottom edges of some of these. Or on this one, maybe it's just that crease in the leaf. All right, and then before that has a chance to dry, now we can go in with that dark blue. And this is where we're going to make it really bold, but hopefully because we have those transitions in there, and they might even still be a little bit wet, hopefully this blue will look like it fits a little bit more than the example maybe. That was my one critique of it. So I'm just tracing the blue along that place where I want the darkest shadow, and keep these from being too big. That's the other way we could go south with this, is just making the shadow too big. So there we go, we have it along that side. Just gonna bring it right up to that. There we go. Have it be nice and dark right here. Carry it over there. So because that teal is still wet, you can see it as it goes, it became more tealy and less blue. So it makes it, I think it makes us appreciate it more when it's at when it's fully dark. When it's not like that everywhere, when we have breaks from it. So on this one, I'm just going to have it get dark, and then I just basically press down and then lift it up again. Here I'm going to do the opposite. I'm starting with it pressed down, and then I lift up as I go and let it kind of fizzle out. And one more petal here. Maybe I'll just add the dark blue onto one of those lines, not both. So there's my take on that. If you like the way they did it a bit more, where it's the blue is a bit more strong, you can do that, okay? Now let's add the brown in this stem. And that is just going to be made with 3 opposite colors of the color wheel. So we can take our green, because that's already a mix of blue and yellow, and add a bit of red. And you know what, we'll probably need a bit more of blue and yellow to really sell it. So like I said, mixing is easy. You can look at that color and say, mine is looking a bit orange. And if it is, add a bit of blue. Because the orange would mean, so if these are the 3 we're mixing, yellow, blue, and red, if it's looking like it's a mix of these 2, which would be purple, then add a bit of yellow. If it's looking too orange, add a bit of blue. If it's looking too green, which would be these 2, add a bit of red. So if we understand what makes what, we can mix anything. All right, so we have this brown color now. I'm using that little filbert brush. And we're just going to add this along the part we want darkest on this. You can let some of the green show. And we want it to kind of end right here for that highlight that we added. And then I'm leaving a highlight down here as well. And then if you want to take it one step further, which I'm going to do, follow along with me. I'm just going to mix a slightly darker brown by adding a touch of black to it. and then darken it just a bit in a few spots. So like down here, we can make it a bit darker. And then I just added a little dash of it in a few other spots, just to make that higher contrast, so it goes from light to a much darker brown. All right, we are so close, you guys. I'm actually going back to that larger brush. And I'm going to use a bit of blue. Now we want some water in this. The water will just make it transparent. So our blue will be a bit more see-through, and it will be seen as a little bit more of a violet because we'll see some of that red and orange through it. So once you're ready and you have some watered down blue, let's go ahead and add this in a few spots. So the first one I see is right here at the tip of that petal. You know what, mine is a bit too watery. All right, so there it is, and we can make some nice squiggles. Pulling up towards that middle, you can go out and back in again. There we go. And it looks a little bit funny right there because you're seeing the light reflected in it. But if I move it closer so you can see it just as the color is, you can see it mostly just looks blue, but you might see a bit of violet in it. And if you prefer just a plain violet, you could actually mix the blue and red and go with that. And we can add this in a few other spots. I'm going to add a little bit right here in the shadow under this petal. And a bit right here, going into that center. And then lastly, a little bit right here, going from the center out along those two curves. Beautiful. All right, how's it going for you guys? Hope it's going well. All right. Let us add a bit of white now. As a finishing touch on some of these petals, I think it would go a long ways. So I'm using that big brush, although you can use the smaller one too. And I'm just going to strengthen up some of the white highlights. So like right here, mine got kind of pink. Let's start at the end there and get a really nice bright white, and then just phase it in a little bit. So we're just upping that contrast one more time. This petal right here, I want to show that it is in front of that one. So we can trace the top edge. And you know what, I'll just bring that into that blue a little bit. So we'll get a bit of a light blue. It's kind of pretty. And any other spots that you need to add it on yours, go for it. We could add a bit right here. Just making that brighter. And the last spot that I want to add it is in this petal right here, our special one. Just going to add a little bit on that outside there. A few streaks going into it. So I maybe got a little bit carried away with that, but I think it looks good. Now, we actually don't really need to give that a moment to dry unless your paint is very wet. But all I'm going to do now is take a little dot of yellow, mix it with what I have left of that white, or just a dot of white if you have more white left than me. So we just want this nice light yellow. And this is going to go from that center of the flower out this direction. We want it to pretty much follow the diagonal lines in the background, okay? Although I'm going to have it kind of not follow it perfectly. So it's going out that direction, but I'm going to have gravity pull it down just the slightest bit. And we're starting it right in that center, okay? So be careful we're not starting it in that petal at all. Again, we're following that diagonal, and then by the time we get almost to the, we're not even going to go to the end of this petal. And I'm just going to pull it down a little bit, like that. That's all we want. You might need to go over it a few times to get it as dark as you want. You can make it more yellow if you want. I kind of like that. All right, and we have one last step for you guys. And that is now to take either brush, it doesn't really matter, because we're using the back of it. And we will need a little bit of white. So if you ran out of white, grab just a dot more. I'm going to start with the white. And we're using the back of the brush, dipping it into the color, and then dabbing it around here. And the harder you press it, the bigger the circle is going to be. And also, the more times you dab it, the smaller they're going to get probably, because they'll have less paint, or the fainter it's going to get. So add some in white. Clean it off, and switch to your yellow. And the white I'm going to stick to the bottom sort of, and then it's going to go to yellow in the middle section here. So they're overlapping a little bit. It's not white, yellow, red. It's white, yellow, and then it'll be red. And I ran out of red. And lastly, the red will start just past the tip of that petal there. We don't want to create any patterns or anything. We just want to be dabbing that on, just like that, just kind of randomly, but following that basic shape right there of it, continuing past that line until it looks something like that. And you can add more if you want. And that is it for our red hibiscus painting. So, thank you all so much for joining me for tonight's painting. I hope that you all learned a little bit about yourself and that you created something beautiful. And I also just hope that you had a great experience. I think that is the focus of this, and I don't want to lose sight of that, okay? So I hope you all had a great, amazing experience. And I'm so thankful that you are doing Creative Box Live, and I will see you next time. Thank you guys, and have a great night.